Alrighty, hey folks, it's a miserable day here in Ireland today, so I'm taking the time to do a video somebody asked for where I talk about the mercenary units that are available in the game in a similar fashion to how we ran through all the factions in the run up to the actual Kickstarter. So remember, some units that appear on the mercenary list, they can be purchased for glory points off list by some other factions. So the best example of that is actually the first one, the combat medic. They are part of the new Antioch list, but they can be like hired as a mercenary basically by the trench pilgrims for glory. And if you don't know what glory is something that you will earn whilst playing campaigns. So for the most part, mercenary lists are things that you might be considering as you play through a campaign. You'll be deciding, do I want to hire a mercenary? Do I want to get something like a glory item? And we'll try and shed a little bit of light on what might be a good idea as we go through this. So the combat medics, they can be hired by Trench Pilgrim Warbands only for 2 glory. And that's actually a nice price for these and for what they can do. So the medic will carry a Misericordia and a medikit. They wear a gas mask and a suit of standard armor. And then you can't modify the equipment, armor, and weapons of a mercenary medic in any way. So they have finished a fallen, which is due to their knowledge of anatomy and physiology. Medics are experts at inflicting debilitating injuries and excruciating pain. Unless the target has the keyword demonic or black grail, add +1 dice to any injury rolls the medic makes in melee against opponents who are down. So, if you're playing into a lot of like court or black grail units in your campaign, that might undermine the effectiveness of your medic. But other than that, they're a pretty good buy. And then expert medic, the medic adds +1 dice whenever they use their medikit to aid friendly units. So if you are rolling with something, these have a 6-inch movement, +0 ranged, +0 melee. They are basically a really good way to back something up. If you have a trench cleric or something of that nature, a castigator or whatever it might be, who has developed over the course of a campaign into being a really quite brutal melee expert, and you want to back them up, then a combat medic is a great way to do it, because it's either going to pull fire from them as they attempt to deal with the combat medic, or it's going to really nicely back them up if they're downing things and if they're getting injured themselves and things of that nature. So yeah, they're just a very nice little, think of them as an extra activation. This is the best way to think about all mercenaries, I guess, is instead of relying on buying yet another item for that great unit that's developed into a really kind of strong powerhouse melee unit, consider attaching essentially a combat medic to them. It becomes a new activation, and you can then take full advantage of your kind of, let's call it your highlight unit, and then roll up with the combat medic and either finish off or aid the main unit in whatever it is that it is doing. So yeah, that is the combat medic. We've talked about them quite a bit. They're a very kind of famous unit, I think, within the community, and you'll be able to either buy them straight from list if you're in the Antioch, or hire them on as a mercenary if you are trench pilgrims. So quite interesting. Up next, the Witchburner. The Witchburner is a very fun kind of a character. These are the, within the lore, they're the folks who go around like kind of banishing demons and things like that. They are field officers of the Inquisition. They are tasked with hunting down and punishing witches, warlocks, and heretics that cannot be brought to face justice by conventional means. So the implication there is they would prefer to bring these units back and have them kind of prostrate before the church and go through all the rigmarole of a big kind of a public thing, right? You smite the witch publicly. That's it's always been that way. But the witch burners are when something is just too dangerous. You don't want to mess around with that. You just want to end it. You send in the witch burners. They get the job done. On the battlefield, they have the power to channel divine retribution on those deemed to have transgressed against God, causing sinners to burst into flames with mere words of condemnation. Since none are sinless, none are safe from their words. It's pretty cool. So a 6/0 on movement and range, and then a +1 dice on melee, -2 armor. Right, these guys they can deal with it, and then a 32 mil base. So they're equipped with reinforced armor. They wear a helmet, and they carry a war gavel for bonking. Which is pretty cool. And once again, you cannot alter them. They're mercenary. You pick them up. You can't alter them in any way after doing so. They cost 5 glory points, which is quite expensive. So their abilities: Divine Judgment. The Witchburner can select any model in the opposing warband within 24 inches, even if they're hidden or out of sight, and bring judgment of heaven upon them with a litany of condemnation. This is a risky action. If successful, the model suffers 1 blood marker. Models with the keyword heretic, black rail, or demonic suffer 2 blood markers as it bursts into celestial flames. This holy fire even affects units that are immune to fire weapons. Ceremonial duty: the Witchburner has taken vows to persecute heretics with extreme prejudice. Nothing will stop this holy task. They are immune to fear. And then dignified conduct: due to the dignity of their status, the Witchburner cannot take the dash action. They're the stereotypical slow plodding unit, essentially. They can't dash, but they can charge. So I would imagine that's a balance issue, right? Divine Judgment is basically a be on the table, I know you're there, I'm going to hit you with some blood markers type of thing. And you're kind of trading that, right, risky action for the dash, so it's all good. And then the Gavel of Justice. The staff of the Witchburner is both a mark of their office and a weapon imbued with the wrath of God against those who have broken divine law. It dooms the souls of those found guilty to burn in flames for all eternity. It's a one-handed weapon, and if the Witchburner hits an enemy with the Gavel of Justice, the target of the attack automatically sustains divine justice, as explained in the Witchburner's ability. So they automatically take that 1 or 2 blood markers, even if the attack did no damage otherwise. This does not count as the Witchburner having used the Divine Judgment action. Thus, the Witchburner can potentially cause multiple Divine Judgments during a single activation. So they can get pretty oppressive if you're just hunting down something that would normally cause a bit of trouble for you. If you find yourself over the course of a campaign running into something where fear is the problem, this guy doesn't really care about it. He doesn't really care about their armor. He doesn't really care about anything. He's just going to stack blood markers on them. And the best thing about these dudes is you can get to Bloodbath pretty quick. So keep that in mind. 5 glory points is a lot. You're likely to attract a lot of attention with a Witchburner on the board, which, once again, that's another great way to spend, or great reason to spend 5 glory points, frankly. And you are going to stack and bloodbath something pretty quick with them. So keep that in mind. If there's just a particular unit on the other side that's really bothering you, then a Witchburner might just be the way to go to clean them out. And they can be hired by New Antioch and Trench Pilgrim warbands. So, up next, the Communicant Anti-Tank Hunter. The Communicants are partakers of the experimental chemical communion, the blood and flesh harvested from a metachrist by the Mendelist monks and applied to the genome of volunteers. The most holy and pious of the church are chosen to partake of the experimental communion, going through many biological changes to become larger and more durable, greatly enhancing their effectiveness on the battlefield. Their divinely enhanced strength allows them to carry and shoot massive anti-material guns as easily as a normal soldier would wield a simple rifle. The process is uncertain, however, with the possibility for unpredictable side effects. Some lose their ability to speak, or their higher brain functions become distracted by the heavenly choir only they can hear, requiring exact commands from their handlers. Because the church consistently needs funds to sustain its military operations, communicants are frequently allocated to the highest bidder among the armies affiliated with New Antioch. Their services are in constant demand as they are able to take out enemy fighting vehicles, heavily armored troops, and strong points with a single shot. So once again, 5 glory, and once again, they can only be hired by New Antioch and Trench Pilgrims. You're not going to see these guys fighting for the devil. That's just the way it is. So they have a movement of 6 inches, a ranged of +1 dice, a melee of +1 dice, -1 armor, and a 40mm base. So they're armed with an anti-material rifle and a helmet. They count as being armed with 2 trench clubs in melee combat. They're basically punching the shit out of you with mega hard fists is the way that works. Their flesh is hard as iron, so communicants are considered to be wearing standard armor, as noted in their profile. You cannot alter their weapons and equipment in any way. They have the strong keyword, so they ignore the effects of heavy for any weapon that they might wield, which is basically their weapon. Communicants are creatures with unnatural vitality and are subject to the rules for tough, so they're very hard to get rid of. And a miracle of regeneration. At the start of the activation, a communicant may remove 1 blood marker from themselves if they have any. So they're quite sticky on the battlefield, basically. They are tough to get rid of, is the only way to describe them, and they can do a great whomping chunk of damage to things that are otherwise maybe a little bit scary to deal with. So they can be very, very good. Now, to go hand in hand with them, we have the Mendelist Ammo Monk. These guys cost 2 glory, so if you wanted to take both, it would be 7 glory total. The Order of Mendelist Monks is entrusted with the design of divinely enhanced items and the creation of the communicants, devotees who have undergone chemical communion with an infusion of the synthesized blood of a Metachrist. Yes. The Brotherhood of Blessed Munitions is one of the subsects of the Mendelist Order, whose duty is to provide the faithful with various types of ammunition treated with the chemically altered blood of a Metachrist. Such solutions are highly unstable and difficult to handle, and the secrets of their various formulae are jealously guarded. On the battlefield, the monks brave enemy fire and infernal terrors, committed to their holy task of bringing the wrath of the Lord upon the heretics. Their patron, Saint Barbara, is said to lift those who die on the battlefield to everlasting glory. Now, these guys are kind of interesting, right? They are 6-inch movement. They have a -1 dice in range, -1 dice in melee, and a base of 25 mil. They've got no weapons. They wear a gas mask and carry the ammunition sacrament. Their abilities are faithful followers. When a friendly model within 1 inch of the monk is activated, you can declare that the monk is activated at the same time. You may then use the monk before taking any action or movement with the model you originally activated. This does not allow you to activate the monk more than once per turn. The ammunition sacrament. As a risky action, the monk can provide a friendly model within 1 inch of it with one of the following benefits. The chosen benefit will last until the end of the target model's activation this turn. So, Bullet of the Guided Path. Wherever this model takes an attack with a ranged weapon, add +1 dice to hit. The Cartridge of His Wrath. Add the keyword shrapnel and blast 2 inches to every ranged weapon this model is equipped with. And Echo of His Word. Whenever this model makes an attack with a ranged weapon, add +1 to injury rolls caused by that attack. So you get to constantly switch what it is that you are going to be good at depending on what it is that you are hitting. If something's hard to injure, you can add to your injury rolls. If something's hard to hit, you can add to your hit rolls. If you want to stack blood markers, you can add shrapnel and blast. It's whatever you want to do. Alrighty, the Sin Eater. They can be hired by Heretic Legion, the Black Rail, and the Court of the Seven-Headed Serpent only. So Sin Eaters are horrific creatures. Once they were mortal men and women, but their overwhelming greed and hunger for human flesh, tainted with sin, combined with the corrupting influence of the Hellgate, has turned them into a form that matches their inner foulness. They're swollen into monstrous proportions and are always at a point of nearly bursting, yet forever ravenous for more flesh and human sins to devour. The Sin Eater is one of very few creatures that Beelzebub approves of outside of his own followers due to its insatiable gluttony. So the Sin Eaters are really kind of fun and interesting and scary. They've got 6-inch movement, NA on ranged, +2 on melee, -2 armor, and 50mm base. They're equipped with reinforced armor and a 2-handed tenderizer maul. Once again, they can't be equipped with anything else. So they are tough. Sin Eaters are huge creatures with a natural vitality and are subject to the rules for tough. They have Devour the Guilty. Okay, this is long. Bear with me. As a risky action, the Sin Eater can attempt to consume a model, friend, in which case the action is not risky and is done with +1 dice, or foe, that is on a 40mm or smaller base and is within 1 inch. So if they're within combat range, melee range. If successful, remove the model from the table and set aside any markers that the model has, blood, infection, or blessing, etc. While it is devoured, the model cannot be targeted by any attack or ability. When activated, the devoured model may take 1 melee attack action available to it, but the attack suffers a -3 dice penalty when rolling to hit. So you're inside punching at guts, basically. A devoured model counts as being down for all rules purposes, including morale, and if it is still devoured at the end of the battle, it counts as being out of action instead. Whenever the Sin Eater is activated, the Devour model suffers 1 blood marker automatically that cannot be avoided by any means, so you're taking that blood marker. If the devoured model suffers a blood marker in this way, when it already has 6 blood markers, it is immediately taken out of action and it is no longer considered devoured. If the Sin Eater is taken out of action, the devoured model is placed down where the Sin Eater was. The Sin Eater can only ever have 1 consumed model in its belly. So, anyone who has played League will be aware of Tahm Kench. It's that. It's Tahm Kench. If a friendly unit is in a very risky situation, you can gobble it up, right, to protect it in your belly. Or if a enemy unit is going to be real bothersome, like think of like an assassin or something like that with a couple of blood markers stacked on it, you can gobble him up and he can't really do much unless he tries to get out of your belly. So yeah, a very interesting mechanic. Vomit. The Sin Eater attempts to purge a model it is devoured as an action with +4 dice. If successful, the model's controller places the model within 1 inch of the Sin Eater. If no suitable space exists, the vomit fails and the model remains devoured. The vomited model is down. The Sin Eater can only use this action if it has a model devoured. So you can like get rid of it, basically. You can puke it out if you want to devour something else. And then the Tenderizer Maul. So this weapon has the same rules as a 2-handed hammer, but its huge reach means that the Sin Eater may make 1 melee attack action against each model it is fighting in melee. So thematically, just consider the Sin Eater to be taking enormous swipes that everything must dodge. It's not like it's technically not getting multiple attacks. It's just taking 1 huge attack and everything within reach must try and dodge it. That's the way I like to think about it. This thing isn't fast, it's glacial, but in that same way, it's going to run you over. And then it's got Heretic, Fear, Tough, and Strong keywords. I think the Sin Eater is a super strong unit. I've talked about it before, how much I love disruption over straight up kind of stacking. And this is very disruptive. It becomes very impactful in combat to deny whatever it is that your opponent wants to do. I love denial play. So, yeah, Sin Eaters, they're a good time. The Gothic Warlock. These cost 4 glory points, and they can be hired by Heretic Legion or the Court of the Seven-Headed Serpent only. Beelzebub can't be having these. Gothic Warlocks are horrific creatures from the death factories of the Third Circle of Hell, manufactured from captured priests, prophets, vicars, rectors, and monks. So basically anyone who used to have a lot of faith. Sucks for them. Fiendish machines first burn their flesh away with hellfire, encasing the still living skeletons in an infernal suit of armor and stamping them with goetic ruins. The process is so agonizing that they consent to a demonic pact to bring an end to their pain. Thus, a new goetic warlock is born, ready to hunt the living they once swore to protect. So these guys can move 6 inches. They've got +1 to ranged, +1 melee, -2 armor, and a base of 40mm. They've got reinforced armor. A warlock counts as being armed with 2 swords in melee combat. Its arms are deadly weapons in their own right, and you cannot alter the warlock's weapons and equipment in any way. Abilities. Gothic Portal. As a risky action with +1 dice, the warlock can teleport up to 6 inches in any direction into a free space that it can see, including into melee with an enemy model. The warlock may bring a single enemy model that is in melee combat with it and has a base size of 32mm or smaller. There must be suitable space for the warlock and a possible passenger, which must end the teleport in melee combat with the warlock. So, it may not teleport out of the battlefield. It may teleport even if it is currently down, but remains so after the teleportation. Barbed Embrace. Enemies cannot retreat from the Gothic Warlock. Additionally, if a model is able to move out of melee combat with the Warlock because of a special ability, they cannot. So Assassins, you can't blink in and out of this one. Hunters of the Left-Hand Path, same. Unholy Horror. The Gothic Warlock causes fear. Gothic Gaze. This is an action which is modified exactly the same way as a ranged attack executed against one enemy the Warlock can see within 24 inches. Long story short, ranged attack, treat as such. If successful, the model suffers 1 blood marker. If the success is a critical success, the target suffers 2 blood markers instead. This action can be used against enemy models in melee combat without having to randomize the target. So that's pretty groovy. Gothic Warlocks are probably thematically my favorite of all the mercenaries, and visually I think they're my favorite too. And I think they are once again leaning into that heavy disruptor vibe, less so than the Sin Eater, but very, very, very annoying if your opponent is fielding something that's normally very like hit and run. These guys can just lock it down. So incredibly useful for that. Consider if you're taking on those kind of units like Assassins. Now, the Observer. We've talked about the Observer a lot. They're the guys with the little helmets who can hear God and all that kind of good stuff. They have an 8-inch movement, a +1 dice to ranged, a +2 dice to melee, -1 armor, 32mm base. They cost 3 glory points, and they can be hired by New Antioch and Trench Pilgrims only. So they have standard armor, an Oculus helm, which counts as a combat helmet and a gas mask, the Trench polearm, an inbuilt medikit, and once again, you can't alter their stuff in any way. They have lightning speed. In melee, the Observer may attack twice with its Trench polearm instead of just once. Temporal Fugue. Attacks that target the Observer suffer -1 dice to hit. The Eye of God. If the Observer fails an action, you may re-roll the dice. However, if any of the dice you roll gives a result of 1, there is a psychic backlash, and the Observer suffers a down result, including any resulting blood markers, and their activation immediately ends. Scary. It's risky to have such fate in the Lord. So I'm assuming that this is on rerolls only. If any of the dice you roll gives a result of a 1, so the reroll only. And if the Observer fails an action, so it's any action you can take as many times as you're trying to take them, but you can only reroll them once. Fail the reroll on a 1, eat shit. Voice of God. As a risky action, the Observer may command any model on the board, friend or foe, that has not been activated this turn. If successful, that model is compelled by the divine words. The Observer's activation immediately ends, and the target's activation begins immediately after. So it is a fun way to skip the reactive activation from your opposition. If you want to use your Observer and then instantly do something to capitalize or to cover the successes or failures of that, you activate something else as a risky action. And generally speaking, that would be the last thing you would try and do anyway, so the risky action doesn't really matter for the most part. I tend to counsel against taking risky actions early, unless there's absolutely nothing else you can do that's worthwhile. I think most people would do that. Okay, the Mamluk faris. These cost 4 glory points, and they can only be hired by the Iron Sultanate and the Principality of New Antioch. So, these guys are an echo of a bygone age. Last members of the warrior elite that once ruled a great empire in northern Africa. They suffered grievous losses at the earliest stages of the Great War, when the legions of the demon Zalambur emerged from the gate. The Fatimids led their Mamluk forces in a desperate campaign to reclaim the Levant. But of their fate there is no tale. Instead of returning victorious warriors, the slaves of Jehannam rushed through Sinai like an evil wind, razing Alexandria and Cairo to the ground. So this is what, lost Egypt. The remaining Mamluks fought bitterly to protect their home, but to no avail. Too proud to leave their ancestral homes at the mercy of evil, some of the last Mamluks did not heed the call to migrate beyond the Iron Wall, and instead dispersed throughout the lands they once ruled to fight on. A fight that has never ceased since those dark days. So yeah, pretty groovy. Alrighty, they are 6-inch movement, +1 dice to ranged, +1 dice to melee, -2 or -3 armor, and base of 32mm. They carry a Jezzail with alchemical ammunition. They wear a helmet and reinforced armor. In addition, before each battle, they may choose one of the following loadouts from their personal armory. So these guys have a bit of adaptability to them over the course of a campaign and can react to what's occurring. They can bring a pole arm and trench shield, a sword and pistol, or a 2-handed sword, and they don't care about heavy keywords. So, abilities. The Sworn Sword. Mamluks can fight or can form a fire team with any one elite model in the warband they are part of. This fire team is always in addition to any other fire teams the warband is allowed to form. If a Mamluk joins a New Antioch fire team, the model benefits from the coordinated fire team special rules. Martial prowess. Mamluks are disciples of a very complicated word that I'm not going to butcher. The knightly discipline passed on through generations. They practice ceaselessly and have few equals. This gives their Jezzails the keyword assault, as well as the shield combo ability. Additionally, they suffer no penalties for fighting with an offhand weapon in melee. And then Arabian Destroyer. Unless the scenario prohibits use of the special deployment of infiltrators, you may deploy the Mamluk on any table edge as long as they are at least 8 inches away from an enemy model after infiltrators are deployed. Mamluks can also be deployed in your own deployment zone as standard. So yeah, they're really interesting, and I really like their adaptability. The fact that you can switch out their loadout depending on the fight and depending on exactly what it is that you're going to be taking on. I like that a lot. And I think it was 4, let me double check. Yeah, 4 glory points. They're well worth it. So when would you take or consider taking a mercenary or adding them to your group? Realistically, you never want to be in a position where you're spending glory points just to spend them, where you're not actually adding to the efficiencies or ability of your current warband to do anything important. So a really good example of that would be you've already got let's say you've got a chorister, and your chorister is doing a really good job in melee. It's becoming a melee beast. You've gotten lucky with your abilities and your rolls, and you're putting together a really nice melee combat focused chorister. You're taking advantage of that fear. You're taking advantage of the hymns and all the rest of it. You've already got an executioner's axe on that guy, or double sack knives, or something like that. You're good. You might, you don't need to buy another glory item and put it on him just to do it. You can always just buy a Sin Eater, put it in there. then what you're getting is you're getting the advantage of that extra activation. You're getting the advantage of that extra unit that adds disruption. You're getting the advantage of that extra tactical consideration that your opponent needs to take into account. And that stuff, we've talked about picking your initial warbands and keeping them to a reasonable size and scope. But the need for more, the need for options, the need for tactical challenge that your opponents just don't see coming gets stronger and stronger as the campaign goes on. You definitely want to have more activations over your matches. If you're activating the same amount of units by your 5th game as you were in your 1st game, it's probably going to start getting very, very hard for you. You're probably going to get bogged down by weight of numbers. So keep that kind of stuff in mind. That's the mercenary units. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you're newer to wargaming, as always, that these videos help you figure out not what to do. You should never be doing what anybody tells you to do. You should always just be trying to figure out kind of what appeals to you as a player. But certainly, there's a lot of smart people in the community. There's a lot of people doing good things and good content and great write-ups, especially on the Facebook page and in the Discord. There's some fun tactical talks. Add it all. Let it become a big salad in your brain as you kind of work stuff out. And hopefully these videos are just part of that too. They're just little bits of information that go into the overall picture and puzzle of your tactical gameplay. So yeah, that's it, folks. I hope you're having a wonderful December, and thank you for watching. Bye.